You ended your day like any other. You brushed your teeth, you checked your phone, you turned off the lights. Nothing felt off, at least not on the surface. But the moment your head touched the pillow, something shifted. The silence became heavier, your chest just a little tighter, and that subtle ache in your soul, the one you've been ignoring, returned with a vengeance. There's no reason to feel like this, you tell yourself. No clear trigger, no tragedy. So why, when you're supposed to rest, do you feel like you're quietly breaking inside? That's where it begins, not with chaos, not with fear, but with a sadness that has no name. And the most terrifying part? You've learned to live with it. Night after night, you fall asleep carrying a weight that never had a face, a pain you can't explain to anyone. It isn't depression, it isn't anxiety, it's something older, something colder, something you can't quite touch, but that always seems to touch you. You know this sadness well. It settles behind your eyes, just before sleep takes over. It presses against your ribs, right when your thoughts begin to quiet, and you try to make sense of it. Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe I overthink. Maybe I'm too sensitive. But what if none of those answers are true? What if that sadness is not a symptom of weakness, but a message? Because sometimes the soul doesn't scream, it whispers. And when you begin to feel sadness for no reason, and especially at night, it could be your soul's way of telling you that something within is slipping away, not violently, not suddenly, but like a candle burning too slow for anyone to notice until it's almost gone. There's a deep, sacred truth hidden in this invisible sorrow. Your soul is aware of things your mind is not ready to see. In spiritual terms, nighttime is not just when the body rests, it's when the subconscious opens. The shields are lowered, the distractions are removed. What's left is raw, honest, unfiltered. And what emerges in that stillness isn't always comforting. Sometimes it's grief you didn't know you were holding. Sometimes it's fear that was never named. Sometimes it's the echo of spiritual wounds that were never allowed to bleed. And sometimes it's the warning. Tolkien understood this in ways that most writers never touched. His stories were not just about battles of swords and kings, but of souls on the edge. Frodo didn't just carry the ring, he carried the weight of what it represented. And that weight didn't scream at him. It whispered, it eroded, it ate at him when no one was looking, slowly, quietly. Just like this sadness that creeps into your chest as you try to rest. It's not fantasy, it's prophecy. Have you ever felt like your soul was trying to speak, but no one around you could understand? Share the moment that felt like that for you in the comments. Many people assume that if something is wrong spiritually, it will be obvious, dramatic, loud. But in truth, the most devastating spiritual shifts begin in silence. That gentle unease you keep brushing off. That ache in your heart that only appears when you're alone. That disconnection from joy that sneaks in when the world gets quiet. These are not random, they are signals, precursors, invitations, or sometimes final warnings. Because the soul, when it begins to retreat, doesn't always slam the door. Sometimes it just begins to fade. Have you ever felt like you were losing something inside you, but didn't know what it was? Have you ever mourned a part of yourself you couldn't even name? That's not madness. That's not weakness. That is spiritual erosion, and the longer it goes unacknowledged, the more powerful it becomes. You may think you're just in a slump, but there's a difference between being tired and being spiritually starved. And when the sadness hits hardest at night, it's because your soul knows you're finally quiet enough to hear it, and maybe still stubborn enough to ignore it. And so it tries again, every night, a little deeper, a little louder, a little heavier, until one day it won't. There's a reason this sadness appears when you lie down to sleep. The night is when the veil is thinnest. It's when your body surrenders and your spirit speaks. And if it's speaking through sadness, it means there's something wrong, something out of balance, something leaking energy, something trying to break through. Have you noticed the dreams? The ones you don't fully remember, but that leave you with a strange emotion you carry all day? Have you noticed how the air feels heavier in your room, as if you're not completely alone? These aren't coincidences. They're spiritual impressions. The first signs of a war your soul is already fighting without your consent, and now you're here, reading this, feeling it, remembering every night that ended in a silence too loud to bear. That wasn't your imagination, that was your awakening. But awakenings come with a choice. You can go back to pretending the sadness is just part of life, or you can begin to ask the question that changes everything. What is my soul trying to tell me that I've been too afraid to hear? Because the sadness that returns every night is not weakness, it's a message. And it's waiting for you to listen. You wake up exhausted, not the kind of tired that comes from too little sleep or too much activity. This is something else, something deeper. A fatigue that no amount of coffee or fresh air seems to fix. Your body feels like it has rested, but your spirit feels like it has been through something it can't explain. And maybe it has. There's a secret most people never talk about because they're too afraid to believe it might be true. Sometimes your soul doesn't rest when you sleep. Sometimes it fights quietly, desperately, invisibly. While your body lies still in bed, your spirit is crossing landscapes no one else can see, battling shadows no one else can feel. And when the sun rises and you open your eyes, you carry the weight of a night that didn't belong to dreams. You felt it. The heaviness in your chest when you wake, the strange tension in your shoulders, the pulse in your head, like you've been running through a storm. You look around and everything seems normal, but inside, it's chaos, a silent war. And the most haunting part, you don't know where it started or why it never ends. That's the hidden nature of spiritual warfare. It doesn't always look like chaos outside. It happens in the background, in the shadows. And the battlefield isn't a distant land. It's you. In Tolkien's world, the greatest battles were not always fought with swords. They were fought in the hearts of the characters. Frodo didn't just carry the ring across Mordor. He carried the weight of temptation, of doubt, of invisible pressure. Every step was a battle not to give in, not to fall. And that battle happened while the world around him kept moving, unaware. Just like your world moves, while your soul tries to hold the line. There is a kind of spiritual fatigue that comes from carrying pain that has no voice, from resisting energies that want to enter you while you're vulnerable, from fighting for a version of yourself you haven't even fully become yet. That's why rest doesn't restore you, because your soul is doing the hardest work of all, keeping you spiritually alive. Have you ever gone to bed after a normal day only to wake up feeling like something happened, but you can't explain what? Have you noticed moments where you feel haunted by a mood you can't name, like you've brought something back from wherever you went in the night? That's not your imagination. In the quiet of sleep, your defenses lower, and that's when the war begins. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally still enough for the deeper fight to begin. The energies that cling to old wounds, the spirits that feed on fear, the shadows of your own past decisions. They don't need to knock on your door during the day. They wait for night, when the distractions are gone, when the noise has stopped, when your soul is left alone with itself. And not everything that comes during that silence is peaceful. Some people wake up crying and don't know why. Others wake up angry, anxious, or completely numb. And they brush it off. They say, it's just stress, just a weird night. But what if it's not? What if you're waking up carrying the bruises of spiritual conflict, bruises that can't be seen but can absolutely be felt? Your dreams might not even remember the war, but your soul does. There are ancient teachings, hidden in folklore, mysticism, and spiritual traditions, that speak of the night as a sacred battleground. It is believed that during sleep, the soul travels. It heals, it encounters, it fights, and not always for itself. Some people, The spiritually sensitive, the ones who feel everything too deeply, are said to fight on behalf of others. They're called guardians, intercessors, old souls who carry burdens that don't belong to them because their spirit knows how to survive the dark. Could that be you? Could the reason you wake up weary every morning be because your spirit is doing work your mind can't comprehend? This isn't just poetic metaphor. There are those who report vivid patterns, waking always at the same hour of the night, dreaming of being chased, facing storms, crossing wastelands, all symbolic echoes of internal wars. And though the specifics change, the feeling remains. You're being tested while you sleep. But here's the thing most people never consider: the fact that you're still waking up, still breathing, still standing, means you're winning. Yes, you're tired, but you're still here. And that matters, because while others sleep in peace, unaware of the invisible currents moving around them, you are engaging with the unseen. You are resisting forces that want you passive, numb, broken. You are enduring what most people couldn't even acknowledge. And even though you carry no medals, no proof, and often no understanding of what you've survived it, and you will again. But you need to know this. The soul can only fight alone for so long. Eventually the rest of you must rise to meet it. The body, the mind, the will. If your spirit has been protecting you night after night, it's not just a battle, it's a call. A plea for you to take back your power in the waking world too. Because what happens next depends on what you choose to do while you're awake. And that choice, the one that changes everything, is coming. Some mornings you wake up carrying emotions that don't belong to you, a weight in your chest, an unexplained fear, a feeling of shame or sorrow that has no memory attached, and no matter how hard you try, you can't trace them back to anything from your day, your past, or your thoughts. So where did they come from? What entered your spirit while your body was at rest? This is where the lines blur between what is yours and what never was. You are not always alone when you sleep, and you are not always alone when you wake. Because spiritual battles are not just between light and dark forces on some distant plane. They are fought in thoughts, in sensations, in energies, in impressions that arrive like whispers, carried by the dark, slipping into your subconscious when your defenses are low. And sometimes, those whispers don't leave with the sunrise. Have you ever had a thought so strange, so unlike you, that it frightened you? A feeling that pushed you towards someone you know you should avoid? Or a moment of doubt so sharp it cut into your peace like a knife? These are not always random. Many times, they are what remains after a night of spiritual influence, encounters you were not fully aware of, but your soul experienced in full. There are ancient teachings that speak of this, mystical traditions that tell of dream walkers, shadow clingers, spiritual parasites that move silently through the veil when it's thinnest. They don't need to possess you. They don't need to scream. They just need to suggest, to influence, to plant the seed. Because if they can shift your emotions, bend your thoughts, and distort your perception, even just a little, the rest will unfold on its own. You'll start making decisions that don't align with your truth. You'll second-guess your intuition. You'll isolate. You'll spiral, all without realizing that it began with a presence you couldn't see, one you never invited, but one that found you vulnerable. And that vulnerability is often disguised as silence. Think back. Have you ever gone to bed after feeling strong, only to wake up flooded with doubt? Have you felt waves of grief that have no origin? Have you suddenly remembered people, places, or traumas from decades ago, triggered by nothing? These are signs, not psychological glitches, not random noise. They are indicators that something came close to your soul while you were defenseless. And now, it lingers. Tolkien hinted at this kind of spiritual interference often. The Palantiri, the seeing stones, offered visions. But those visions were not neutral. They were manipulated by Sauron. He didn't invade minds violently. He influenced, twisted, gave glimpses of truth wrapped in distortion, just enough to make the strong doubt themselves, just enough to make the brave fall silent. And that's exactly how these spiritual intrusions work in real life. It's not about making you scream, it's about making you believe that your peace is no longer possible, that your thoughts are no longer safe, that your feelings cannot be trusted. And once that belief takes root, your soul begins to fragment. But here's the most dangerous part. You don't question it, because it feels like it's coming from you. The fear, the confusion, the impulses, but they're not yours. They're foreign, introduced, imposed. And unless you stop, breathe, and examine, they will weave themselves into your identity. If any part of this silent journey reminded you of something you've lived through, tell us below. Your story might be the light someone else needs to find. People go years carrying emotions that never belonged to them. They carry rage from ancestors, shame from past generations, grief that never had a source. Why? Because something spiritual found a door that was left open while they slept, and it walked in. And maybe that's what happened to you. This is why spiritual discernment is not just a gift, it's a necessity. You must learn to ask, is this feeling mine? Is this thought consistent with who I am? Or is it a shadow left behind by something I don't yet understand? Because once you learn to separate what is truly yours from what was implanted, you begin to reclaim your ground. And reclaiming ground is the first step to winning a war. Start small. Notice patterns. Does a certain emotion hit at the same time each night? Does it follow certain dreams? Do you feel worse after sleeping in specific places or during certain moon phases? These are not small things. These are spiritual markers, clues from your deeper consciousness trying to alert you. Pay attention to what lingers in your body that your mind can't explain. And most of all, understand this: you are not broken. You are being influenced. And once you identify that influence, you can expel it. You can close the door it entered through. You can restore the boundary that was crossed. But to do that, you must first believe that not every emotion is yours, and not every thought should be trusted, especially the ones that come after a night where something felt off. Because the next part of this journey is not just about surviving the war, it's about taking back your authority within it. And that too begins in the silence. You've called it exhaustion. You've blamed it on stress, poor sleep, or just the chaos of life. But deep down, you know the truth. Something in you is breaking, quietly, slowly, and no one can see it. You smile, you function, you move through the world like everything is fine, but inside it's hollow. The joy feels synthetic, the laughter feels rehearsed. You're doing everything right, yet something still feels terribly wrong. And the worst part, you don't even know what to call it. There's no diagnosis for this. No prescription, no one-size-fits-all fix. Because what you're dealing with isn't physical, it's spiritual decay. There is a point in every soul's journey where the signs start small, subtle. You feel more tired than usual. You begin to lose interest in the things you once loved. Your creativity dulls. Your dreams become gray, repetitive, confusing. You stop feeling connected. And at first, you dismiss it. Everyone gets like this sometimes, but slowly it deepens. And you don't know when it happened, but you start to forget who you used to be. This is how the soul begins to weaken, not through dramatic collapse, but through slow erosion. You ignore the weight in your chest, thinking it's just stress. You overlook the tears that come out of nowhere, thinking you're just being sensitive. You explain away the feeling of being watched at night, the dreams that leave a shadow in your room, the chill that wraps around you even when the air is still. But the soul doesn't scream. Not at first, it whispers. It knocks softly, it waits, until it doesn't. And when you've ignored the signs long enough, the soul does something even more dangerous. It begins to withdraw. Not entirely, just enough to keep you alive, but not enough to make you feel. You become numb, numb to beauty, numb to love, numb to yourself. And that numbness is not peace, it's survival. You are not living, you are enduring. In Tolkien's world, there is a character, Denethor, the steward of Gondor, who is not struck down by sword or arrow, but by despair, by disconnection, by a slow poisoning of the spirit through corrupted visions, half-truths, and spiritual fatigue. He saw only death ahead because he stopped looking inward. He let the darkness write his story, and without realizing it, many of us begin doing the same. We let the weight of unprocessed pain, unresolved questions, and ignored spiritual wounds shape our days. We fill our lives with distraction to avoid feeling what's really there. And then we wonder why no joy stays, why nothing satisfies, why peace feels so far away. The truth is this: when the soul isn't heard, it stops speaking. When it isn't honored, it stops shining. And when it's forced to survive in silence, it starts breaking from the inside out. How do you know you've reached this point? When you no longer care that you're not okay, when the sadness stops being sharp and just becomes constant, when you stop asking for help, not because you're strong, but because you've stopped believing anything will change. That's not strength. That's a soul in collapse. But here's what no one tells you. Even in this collapse, your soul is still fighting for you. That's why you're here. That's why you're reading these words. That tiny flicker you still feel, the one that made you press play, the one that made you stay, that's your soul. Weakened, but not defeated. Silenced, but not gone. It's trying to get your attention one last time, before the numbness becomes permanent, before you forget that you were ever more than what you've become. Because the truth is, no one wakes up destroyed. It happens in layers. First, you stop listening. Then you stop feeling. And finally, you stop hoping. But between each of those stages, there is still a door, a chance, a moment of light, no matter how faint. And maybe this is that moment for you. Maybe the heaviness you've called normal is actually a sign that something sacred is trying to come back to life. Maybe the exhaustion you've blamed on life is the residue of battles you haven't acknowledged. Maybe the numbness isn't who you are, but who you've become in the absence of your soul's full presence. And if that's true, then what happens next matters more than anything that came before, because the next part of your journey isn't about escape, it's about return. A return to the part of you that still remembers the light, to the part that never stopped hoping you'd hear this, to the part that knows healing begins the moment you stop pretending everything's fine. And what you'll discover in the next step is that your soul hasn't left you. It's just been waiting for you to come back. You've made it here, not by accident, not by chance, but because some part of you, even if barely audible, is still awake, still listening, still hoping. After all the nights of sadness with no name, after all the awakenings drenched in silence and spiritual fatigue, after all the battles fought behind closed eyes and all the emotions that never made sense, you're still here, and that means something. What was the first sign your soul gave you? The one you ignored but now finally understand? Leave it in the comments. Your truth could awaken someone today. It means the war didn't break you. Not completely. It means that even in your numbness, even through the silence, a spark remained, a flicker that refused to go out. And now, here you are, standing on the edge of something sacred, not the end of the pain, but the beginning of your return. Because the truth is this: your soul has been waiting, not to punish you, not to accuse you, but to welcome you back. We often imagine spiritual battles as something epic, thunder and fire and angels at war, but the most devastating battles are quieter. They happen in hotel rooms, at 3 a.m., in the dark, in your bed, when no one hears your thoughts. When you whisper, "I don't know what's wrong with me," and stare at the ceiling, pretending tomorrow will be better. But what if tomorrow isn't meant to be better? Until you decide to face what today revealed. See, your soul doesn't want you to survive. It wants you to return to yourself, to your truth, to your calling. And returning doesn't mean rushing. It doesn't mean pretending the pain is gone. It means recognizing that the pain is trying to speak, and you're finally listening. The sadness that crept into your nights was never just sadness. It was the signal flare of your spirit. It was grief for the parts of you that were abandoned, for the dreams buried under fatigue, for the voice that went unheard for too long. It was the mourning of your own magic, forgotten, dismissed, exiled. But even exiled souls find their way home. In Tolkien's world, the journey never ends where the hero expects. Frodo didn't return to the Shire as the same person. He couldn't, because the road changes you, and so does war. There are scars you'll carry now, the kind no one can see, but you'll feel every time the air gets too quiet or the night too long. But these scars are not shame. They're proof that you stayed, that you endured, that even when your soul was fighting battles without your awareness, some part of you was aligned with it, protecting something sacred deep inside. And now the question is, what will you do with what you've just remembered? Because now, you know. You know that not all sadness is just emotion, that not all fatigue is just physical, that not every thought is your own, and not every night is meant for rest. Some are for revelation. You've been called, not because you are perfect, but because you are ready. Ready to stop surviving, ready to stop numbing, ready to stop running from the part of you that remembers who you are when all the masks fall. This next part of your journey won't be easy. There will still be nights where the weight returns, still moments when the dark feels louder than the light. But now, you have something you didn't have before, awareness. And awareness is where healing begins. You are not cursed. You are not broken. You are not forgotten. You are awakening. And from here, everything begins to change, not all at once, but step by step, breath by breath, choice by choice. So take one small step today. Speak aloud the truth you've been afraid to say. Sit in silence, not to avoid the pain, but to listen to it. Open a journal and ask your soul, what do you need from me now? Because when you meet your soul with honesty, it answers. And when it answers, everything hidden begins to rise to the surface, not to destroy you, but to free you. Thank you for walking this far. Thank you for not closing your heart, even when it hurt to keep it open. Thank you for feeling, for remembering, for choosing to stay. And most of all, thank you for listening to the part of you that still believes in something sacred, even in the dark. This is not the end, it's the return. And you're not walking alone, not anymore.